This video is for anyone that has lost their period due to disordered eating, excessive exercise, or stress. I have personally struggled with functional hypothalamic amenorrhea. So I actually had what's referred to as primary amenorrhea, which means I hadn't started my period by a normal time point, which I think is about 16 years old. I did not have my first natural period without birth control until I was 18 years old and about 3 months. I was in college when I got my first period. But at the age of about 17 and a half, I had been put on an oral contraceptive pill to try and see if my body could even bleed. I bled right away, which was a relief because that meant I'm capable of bleeding. I have 2 ovaries, I have a uterus, all of that is working fine. But I had a strong feeling that the reason I had not started my period was because I had suffered with an eating disorder for many years. And I had spent many years being underweight, excessively exercising, restricting my calories, and being very, very stressed. Probably the main concern with not having a period is bone loss. And I had experienced this. When I was about 15, this was at the worst point of my anorexia, I broke 3 different bones in my feet. And this was within a very short time span. I even spent a couple months with a medical boot on each of my feet because I had injuries in both of my feet. And I knew this was because of my eating disorder, but at the time I just wasn't ready to recover. I wasn't able to recover. I didn't have the help, I didn't have the support, and I didn't have the knowledge or resources. When I first learned about hypothalamic amenorrhea, I was actually on YouTube and I saw a video about what was previously called the female athlete triad. And I learned that you can lose your period as a result of not eating enough, over-exercising, essentially being in an energy deficit. I was really scared the whole time that I didn't have a period because I knew that I wanted to have children and I knew that this would possibly affect my fertility. I really dedicated myself to getting my period back. That was the primary motivator for me recovering from my eating disorder. After I had been weight restored, I went month after month without a period, and I was starting to get really scared that maybe there was something else wrong with my body. But now I know that my body just needed time to heal. I needed to show my body that I'm not only capable of putting weight on, but I'm going to maintain that higher body fat level. So after I had been weight restored, it took me about 1.5 years before I started my own period. This is essentially what I had to do. I had to increase my fat intake and start eating saturated fat. I had quite a fear around saturated fat, but this is something that I started incorporating into my diet on pretty much a daily basis. The second thing I had to do was decrease my fiber intake. I had spent years eating way too much fiber. Really, I was abusing fiber. Even after I had gained a lot of weight, I didn't eat regular meals. I was still struggling mentally with my eating disorder, and I spent too many hours fasting. What I needed to do was eat regularly, every few hours, making sure I ate a meal because I was eating and then fasting and then eating even more because I had fasted and then fasting even longer. So starting to eat regularly throughout the day, first of all, controlled my appetite. I was no longer ravenously hungry at each meal because my body knew it was going to get the fuel it needed every few hours. And it was not long after I started doing that my period started. But I also had to stop exercising a lot. And personally, if you're able to, I would just recommend stopping all exercise while you get your period back. And it will come back faster if you stop exercising. And I know that this can be hard, especially if you're an athlete. And I was pretty much an athlete. I did ballet for many, many years, and then I swam for a couple years. So it was hard to remove myself from that kind of daily exercise space. I had started weightlifting a lot. I had to stop doing that. But I was also eating in a calorie surplus and just like really not restricting myself at all. Those are some of my tips for getting your period back. Additionally, if you are someone that consumes a lot of caffeine or uses weight loss medication or stimulants, I would really recommend trying to stop, either cut caffeine completely out of your diet or get down to like 1 cup a day of coffee or whatever you drink. Hi, so I'm editing, and as I watched this back, I wanted to point out that these tips come from my experience. Because I restricted my fat intake, I needed to increase my fat to get my period back. But maybe you're someone that restricts your carb intake, so you'll need to increase your carbs to get your period back. There are so many tips out there, all of them can be useful to you, but you need to really take an honest look at your lifestyle and determine why your body is feeling restricted and overexerted, and make those changes to get your period back. Okay, that's all. If someone prescribes you a birth control pill, I would ask them about their thoughts on other options for improving your bone mineral density. Because currently, the research indicates that birth control pills are not good at restoring bone health, even though you might have a period as a result of your birth control pill. I want to emphasize that I'm not telling you to stop using your birth control pills if you're using them to prevent pregnancy. Birth control is good for preventing pregnancy. But if you are exclusively using your birth control to get a period or to improve your bone health, this is where I would recommend really working on lifestyle changes to get your period back naturally. Now I'm going to talk about the science behind why you've lost your period. So to do that, we need to talk about the HPO axis, which stands for the hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis. The hypothalamus, pituitary gland, and ovaries are three bodily structures that are connected through hormonal signaling to give us a period. The hypothalamus is a brain structure that releases a hormone called gonadotropin releasing hormone, or GnRH. GnRH tells the pituitary gland, which sits right below the hypothalamus, to release two hormones, luteinizing hormone, or LH, and follicular stimulating hormone, or FSH. Now, those hormones tell the ovaries to produce estrogen and progesterone to give us a period. So the HPO axis essentially connects the brain all the way to the female reproductive organs through the release of various hormones. So how does this apply to why you've lost your period? Well, if your body fat gets too low, you don't have enough energy availability, and or your stress levels are high, our bodies will view that as a threat to survival and adjust to preferentially give energy to essential bodily functions. Reproduction isn't essential, so it's one of the first things our bodies shut off. And this is achieved through changes in various hormones, including cortisol, which is a stress hormone that affects our blood sugar, ghrelin and leptin, which are appetite regulating hormones, and thyroid hormone, which affects our metabolism. All of these hormonal changes can be detected by the hypothalamus in our brain. And the result is less production of GnRH. Now, this sends a signal to the pituitary gland to produce less LH and FSH, which then sends a signal to the ovaries to produce less estrogen and progesterone, which can disrupt our menstrual cycle. So, to review, when we have low body fat, low energy availability, and high stress, we get hormonal changes throughout our body. And this tells our brain to produce less of that GnRH, which tells our pituitary gland to produce less LH and FSH, which tells our ovaries to produce less estrogen and progesterone. The disruption of the HPO axis is what causes our periods to stop, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a survival mechanism that our bodies use in a state of starvation, but this is not the optimal way for our bodies to function, so there are consequences.
One of the biggest concerns of not having enough estrogen to have a period is bone loss. Our peak bone mass is acquired during adolescence and in our early 20s. Without a properly functioning menstrual cycle, bone mass accrual is impaired and bone mineral density decreases. This means an increased risk of fractures and an increased risk of osteoporosis. Infertility is another complication. Without enough estrogen, you will not ovulate and your libido will be low, but by restoring your period, you can restore your fertility. So how can we restore a healthy period? Well, if we lower stress, increase body fat, and make sure we have enough energy available to our bodies, this will regulate the hormonal messengers that tell the hypothalamus to make GnRH. Then we'll have a functioning HPO axis, resulting in monthly ovulation and menstruation. It seems simple, but I know that this can be a long process that requires a lot of work. You have to overcome all of your restrictive tendencies and really be gentle to yourself. You might be used to thinking about health as eating less, eating better, exercising more, but right now, for your health, you need to worry less and rest more. You might need to eat more calories, eat more often, give up food rules, exercise less, and gain weight. I know that all of this can be mentally draining, but you absolutely can do it.
After I had gotten my period back, my life improved tremendously. My mood was better. My libido increased. I just felt more strong, more powerful, more womanly. I stopped breaking bones. I haven't broken a bone since before I had started my period. So there's so many benefits, and there are so many costs to not having your period. There might be lifelong bone mineral density issues for you without having a period. It's a lot of information, but yeah, I hope it was helpful. I am happy to say I got pregnant naturally and I had a healthy baby boy. So, yes, this is so important to me. I want you to have children if you want to have children, and I want your bones to be healthy and for you to have a fantastic mood. So, thank you for watching. If you want to know more about my experience with an eating disorder and overcoming anorexia, please subscribe to my channel and join the community that I am trying to build here.